Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militandena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So welcome everyone to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Nice to have Nrsimha Ruparu back in action after recovering from the jaws of death. So today we're reading from Canto 6, Chapter 12. We're going to finish Chapter 12, which is, the title is Vritrasura's Glorious Death. So the completion of this chapter is that Vritrasura is going to actually die, finally. He's going to die his glorious death, and we're going to see the context for that. So we'll start at text 23 and go through to text 35, 35, and we'll read the purport there at 35. Got mics? Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, Vritrasura and King Indra spoke about devotional service, even on the battlefield. And then, as a matter of duty, they again began fighting. My dear king, both of them were great fighters and were equally powerful.
This seems to be a thing, speaking about devotional service on battlefields.
O Maharaj Parikshit, Vritrasura, who was completely able to subdue his enemy, took his iron club, whirled it around, aimed it at Indra, and then threw it at him with his left hand.
With his thunderbolt named Shataparvan, Indra simultaneously cut to pieces Vritrasura's club and his remaining hand.
So Indra's starting to get some confidence, right? He's actually starting to use that thunderbolt and inflict some damage on Vritrasura.
Vritrasura, bleeding profusely, his 2 arms cut off at their roots, looked very beautiful, like a flying mountain whose wings have been cut to pieces by Indra.
It's interesting because even though Vritrasura is a demon, and generally demons are not very beautiful, and what to speak of having your arms cut off and bleeding, it's not usually a beautiful sight. But because Vritrasura was a devotee, then his internal beauty was coming through, his effulgence and the beauty of his character, because now he's in a position of full surrender to the Lord. That's
Vritrasura was very powerful in physical strength and influence. He placed his lower jaw on the ground and his upper jaw in the sky. His mouth became very deep, like the sky itself, and his tongue resembled a large serpent. With his fearful, death-like teeth, he seemed to be trying to devour the entire universe. Thus, assuming a gigantic body, the great demon Vritrasura shook even the mountains and began crushing the surface of the earth with his legs, as if he were the Himalayas walking about. He came before Indra and swallowed him, and Airavata, his carrier, just as a big python might swallow an elephant.
so. He gulped up Indra as well as Airavata, his elephant. He swallowed them whole. Okay,
When the demigods, along with Brahma, other Prajapatis, and other great saintly persons, saw that Indra had been swallowed by the demon, they became very morose. Alas, they lamented, "What a calamity! What a calamity!"
The protective armor of Narayana, which Indra possessed, was identical with Narayana himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Protected by that armor and by his own mystic power, King Indra, although swallowed by Vritrasura, did not die within the demon's belly.
Okay, so there's hope.
With the thunderbolt, King Indra, who was extremely powerful, pierced through Vritrasura's abdomen and came out. Indra, the killer of demon, Bala, then immediately cut off Vritrasura's head, which was as high as a peak of a mountain.
Although the thunderbolt revolved around Vritrasura's neck with great speed, separating his head from his body took 1 complete year, 360 days, the time in which the sun, moon, and other luminaries complete a northern and southern journey. Then at the suitable time for Vritrasura to be killed, his head fell to the ground.
Took a whole year to get through his thick neck.
When Vritrasura was killed, the Gandharvas and Siddhas in the heavenly planets beat kettle drums in jubilation. With Vedic hymns they celebrated the prowess of Indra, the killer of Vritrasura, praising Indra and showering flowers upon him with great pleasure.
O King Parikshit, subduer of enemies, the living spark then came forth from Vritrasura's body and returned home back to Godhead. While all the demigods looked on, he entered the transcendental world to become an associate of Lord Sankarshan.
Jai. So that's the last verse of this chapter. We'll go back and recite the Sanskrit for that one. Right. Vritrasya deha niskrantam Atmajotir arindama Pashyatam sarvadevanam Alokam samapadyata Vritrasya deha nishkrantam Atmajotir arindama Pashyatam sarvadevanam Alokam samapadyata. Yeah. Vritrasya deha niskrantam Atma Jyotir Arindama Pashyatam Sarvadevanam Alokam Samapadyata Vitrasya Deha Nishkrantam Atma Jyotir Arindama Pashyatam Sarvadevanam Alokam Samapadyata Vistrasya Deha Nishkrantam Atma Jyotir Arindama Pashyatam Sarvadevanam Alokam Samapadyata. All right, let's do the word for word together. Vritrasya of Vritrasura, Dehat from the body, Nishkrantam coming out, Atma Jyoti the spirit soul which was as brilliant as the effulgence of Brahman, Arimdama, O King Parikshit, subduer of enemies, Pashyatam were watching, Sarvadevanam while all the demigods, Alokam the supreme abode filled with the Brahman effulgence, Samapadyata achieved. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O King Parikshit, subduer of enemies, the living spark then came forth from Vritrasura's body and returned home back to Godhead. While all the demigods looked on, he entered the transcendental world to become an associate of Lord Sankarshan. So Vritrasura went back home, back to Godhead. Ki Jai. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Indra, not Vritrasura, was actually killed. He says that when Vritrasura swallowed King Indra and his carrier, the elephant, he thought, "Now I have killed Indra, and therefore there is no more need of fighting. Now let me return home back to Godhead." Thus he stopped all his bodily activities and became situated in trance. Taking advantage of the silence of Vritrasura's body, Indra pierced the demon's abdomen, and because of Vritrasura's trance, Indra was able to come out. Now Vritrasura was in yoga samadhi, and therefore, although King Indra wanted to cut his throat, the demon's neck was so stiff that Indra's thunderbolt took 360 days to cut it to pieces. Actually, it was the body left by Vritrasura that was cut to pieces by Indra. Vritrasura himself was not killed. In his original consciousness, Vritrasura returned home back to Godhead to become an associate of Lord Sankarshan. Here the word Alokam means the transcendental world Vaikuntha, where Sankarshan eternally resides. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 12th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Vritrasura's Glorious Death. Right. So, so this is very interesting because there's this battle that's been going on throughout this chapter, and we're hearing that Indra got this weapon made by the bones of the Dichi Muni that was capable of killing Vritrasura. But now we're learning that actually when it came time for killing Vritrasura, Indra didn't actually kill Vritrasura, that Vritrasura left his body by his own sweet will. So this is actually the prerogative of a pure devotee, that a pure devotee can leave the body at will. And we see some examples of that, right? Like Grandfather Bhishma Dev, he could choose the time of his death, and so he was lying there on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, pierced by so many arrows. I don't know. Hare Krishna, yeah. Pierced by arrows, and it wasn't until the time was right that he decided to actually leave. And I think it was mentioned here in one of the verses that, says that then at a suitable time for Vritrasura to be killed, his head fell to the ground. But even then, Vritrasura had already left the previous suitable time of his choice. So, Prabhupada is quoting Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse and this event. So I looked up Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary there in the Acharya's commentaries. And so he comments that when Vritrasura swallowed Indra, he kind of became a little hopeless in one sense, because he was like, come on, kill me. I'm supposed to be killed, and I want to be killed because this is my ticket back to Godhead. So after swallowing Indra, he became hopeless, like, well, he's not going to be able to kill me because he's like in here. He's incapacitated. And so I had better just leave. So then by his, yogic powers, he thought, I'll just use my yogic powers and I'll just leave my body and rejoin my Lord. He was eager to be by the side of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then he just entered into samadhi, and he summoned his mystic yogic powers, and by the strength of yoga, he pushed his soul out of his body. And this all happened while the demigods were looking on. So it says here, Pashyatan Sarvadevanam, that the demigods actually saw Vritrasura's soul, the soul of Vritrasura, leaving that body and shooting off to Vaikuntha. So that must have been quite a sight. And yet the weapon kept, I imagine it going around and around, his neck, trying to gradually sever it from his body. And it took so long because Vritrasura, 1, he was gigantic because he'd assumed that huge form, and 2, because he was already dead. So then rigor mortis sets in, the body becomes stiff and hard, and the weapon was struggling to get through. So, yeah, so there's many interesting things here in this section about Vritrasura's glorious death. And I was thinking that Vritrasura, even though he was a demon, he achieved the perfection of life. And if we go back to the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto, where Parikshit Maharaj has been cursed to die, and he's thinking, what is a glorious death? Because everybody wants to die a glorious death. So especially a person who's lived a glorious life, right? Like Maharaj Parikshit, he was a king, he was a devotee, he was so glorious. And he's thinking, now I need to die, and I want to die a glorious death. So how do I do that? What is the duty? What is the process for perfecting this life? And so in the end of Canto 1, Chapter 19, which is the last verses of Canto 1, he says, what is the way of perfection for all people, and especially those about to die? So how do I perfect, how do I bring about for myself the perfect death, which will be the perfect, the culmination of a perfect life? And he goes on, what should a person hear, chant, remember, and worship? So specifically what to do. And he also asks, and what should one not do? Right? So then Shukadeva Goswami answers in the next canto, in the beginning of the next canto, he says, Etavan Sankhya Yoga Abhyam Swadharma Parinishtaya Janmalabha Parapumsam Ante Narayana Smritihi. It says the highest perfection of human life, whether it's achieved by knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duties, is to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead at the end of life. Ante means the end, and then Narayan means the Lord, Lord Narayan or Krishna, and Smriti means to remember. So he's saying that somehow or other, whatever works for you, right? But somehow or other, remember Krishna. And Rupa Goswami says the same thing in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says, Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayat. That somehow or other. And so Shukadeva Goswami is saying, whether by Sankhya, whether by analyzing this world and understanding the difference between spirit and matter, whether by mystic powers, by yoga, whether by swadharma, by perfect execution of your occupational duties and gradual elevation of consciousness to spiritual consciousness, somehow or other, just remember the Lord. It doesn't matter how, but somehow remember the Lord. So Vritrasura was a demon. So how was he able to remember the Lord? We're going to hear about his backstory in the forthcoming chapters. That as Chitraketu, he was blessed by Angira and Narada Muni gave him a mantra, and to chant this mantra, and it was composed of the names of God, and specifically the names of the 4 forms of Narayan that appear at the very beginning of the creation, from whom the Purusha avatars expand and creation takes place. So those four are they're sometimes called the Chatur Vyuha, the Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So he was chanting a mantra of those four names of the Lord. And so after a short time, actually, because he was very focused, very concentrated and attentive in his chanting, after a very short time, then one of those four personalities, Sankarshan, Lord Sankarshan, appeared to him. And so he got this beautiful darshan of the Lord, the personal form of the Lord. And it's described that Sankarshan is an expansion of Balaram. He's kind of like Krishna. In Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Goloka, he's Krishna, the transcendental cowherd boy. But when Krishna is in Vaikuntha, then he's not a cowherd boy, he's Narayan, right? So Balaram is also there in Goloka as a cowherd boy, Krishna's brother and best friend, and the cowherd boy Balaram, who goes out herding the cows and everything with Krishna every day. But when Balaram appears in Vaikuntha, then he becomes Sankarshan. And he looks similar. He has a white form, he wears a blue dhoti, but instead of wearing a turban, he wears a helmet, and he has, weapons and 4 arms. He's kind of like the equivalent to the Krishna and Vishnu of Goloka Vaikuntha, and Balaram and Sankarshan. So Chitraketu is very attracted by this form of Sankarshan, seeing his beautiful form right before his eyes, and so that stuck in his mind. And then later, as Vritrasura, he remembered the form of Sankarshan, and he meditated on Sankarshan at his final moment. That's what it's saying here. Yeah, and so he was, because he had the darshan, because he had a affection for the Lord and appreciation for the Lord and desire to serve the Lord, he was eager to get back to him. He didn't want to prolong things. And actually this whole situation of his being born as a demon was a blessing by the Lord to speed things up, right, to make it quicker. Because if he had stayed in demigod in the Gandharva Loka as Chitraketu, in his in-between life, as Chitraketu the king on earth, and then Chitraketu the demigod in the heavenly planets, it would have been a long, long time, right? It would have been, the demigods lived for so long, and then also the chances for a demigod to go back home, back to Godhead, just from that demigod life is very slim. It's very unlikely. They usually have to come to birth and then perform bhakti yoga and all this. So so the Lord gave him a benediction of being cursed. So Parvati's curse was a blessing, as are most blessings of great sages. They actually benefit the person who's cursed. So so then he could make it very quick. He was born as a demon, and he could remember the Lord, and he, like Vrihaprabhu was saying the other day, he lived a very short time. His life was very short. He basically lived, he ate some weapons, he got in a fight, and he was killed, or he left, So, and then back home, back to Godhead, woohoo, free from the cycle of repeated birth and death in this material world. So it's interesting here that in the purport, Prabhupada says, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Indra, not Vritrasura, was actually killed. So in what sense was Indra killed? Because we don't see him being killed. We see him winning and living on, and being reinstated as a king of heaven in all of his glory. And so in the Vedic sense of death means rebirth, right? So because in one sense the soul, not in one sense, but in the absolute sense, the soul doesn't die. We never die, right? Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. The soul is eternal, ever-existing, primeval, and immortal. He is not slain when the body is slain. So there is no death. So what does it mean to be killed? And in the Vedic interpretation or explanation of death is that you need to take birth again. Death. So because Indra lived, he wasn't killed in the battle, and he continued living as a demigod, then he was going to have to leave his body and take birth again, which means that he would be killed. So basically, the fact that Indra wasn't killed means that he was killed. The fact that he didn't die that glorious death and go back to Godhead means that he was killed, because he's going to have to actually die because he's going to have to take birth again. So, yeah. So there are some verses in Bhagavatam that say, like, for example, Ayur Harati Vaipumsam Udyan Astan Chayan Aso Tasyarte Kshana, what is it? Kshana, Tasyarte, huh? Say louder. Tasyarte, yeah, the last line is Uttama Shloka Vartaya, but the middle line is Tasyarte Yat Shana Nita, yeah. Uttama Shloka Vartaya says that as the rising, with every rising and setting of the sun, the duration of life of everyone is diminished, except for those who are always engaged in hearing the topics of the Lord. So what does that mean, right? How is it that the sun, the passing of the days and nights, is not decreasing the span of life of a devotee, of someone who's always hearing about Krishna? Because person who's always hearing about Krishna is not going to die. Right? Why? Because they're going to go back home, back to Godhead. Whereas anybody else is going to have to take birth again, which means that their duration of life is diminishing because they're going to have to die. So this is kind of the Vedic concept of death, that death means that you're going to have to take birth again. And if you don't have to take birth again, then you don't have to die. So this, in this sense, that Indra is killed and Vritrasura is not killed, although it looks like the other way around. So it's very interesting perspective on these things. So one very important lesson that we learn here from this pastime of Vritrasura is that there's no impediment to pure devotional service. Because Vritrasura, he's born as a demon. You know, he doesn't have a nice devotee mother and father. He didn't go to Gurukul. He didn't study Bhagavad Gita. His life as Vritrasura, he didn't, chant any mantras. But still he went back to Godhead. Because internally, he was remembering the Lord, because he had that training in previous lifetimes. So it doesn't matter, what family we're born in, what country we're born in, what our gender, our age, or anything. The only thing that matters is our consciousness. We can be Krishna, and there's no material impediment to bhakti. We just need to think of Krishna. And so Vritrasura was able to do that by the mercy of the Lord. And he meditated on Sankarshan. And I was thinking that, there's this verse also from 3rd Canto 3.9.11 that talks about how whatever form of the Lord we like to meditate on, then that's the form that we're going to attain. We're going to go to that place where that form of the Lord lives eternally, and we're going to live and serve him eternally there. So because Vritrasura was meditating on Sankarshan, then he went to the Vaikuntha planet where Sankarshan was presiding. So whatever form of the Lord we're attracted to, we go there. So there are many forms of the Lord, but Srimad Bhagavatam directs us to Krishna. Right? Krishna is the summum bonum. And the whole, the reason, of course, Srimad Bhagavatam presents many different incarnations. In the 2nd canto, there's, so many incarnations of the Lord are described, and then later they're a lot of them are elaborated on in more detail. But then when the 10th canto comes, that's the summum bonum, right? It's summum bonum literally means the ultimate goal, or the ultimate good. So the ultimate good or the ultimate goal is Krishna. And actually the only reason that Bhagavatam describes the other incarnations of the Lord is to glorify Krishna. that all these incarnations are just portions or plenary portions of Krishna. But Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it just adds to his glories, right? It's just like if a parent has really nice children, then that adds to the glories of the parent, right? Or if somebody has, has written a lot of books, or, constructed amazing things, many accomplishments in this world. So they add to the person's glories. So in the same way, the fact that Krishna has many incarnations and expansions, those are just all, like he says in Bhagavad Gita, that all these wonderful manifestations are just a spark of, each one is just a spark of my splendor. So each incarnation is just a spark of Krishna's splendor. And the more we know about Krishna and his incarnations, the more we can appreciate how great and how wonderful Krishna is, how inconceivably potent he is. So, and Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita 18:65, where he says, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyante pratijane priyosime. He says, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your obeisances to me, and thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you're my very dear friend. So, and in the purport there, it's very interesting. It's one of probably my favorite purport in the Bhagavad Gita, because Srila Prabhupada really focuses. Do we have here? And this is right before the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, to abandon everything and just forget about everything, forget about everyone else, and just surrender to Krishna. So this is really the point that that Krishna is driving home in his instructions to Arjuna, as he concludes his instructions to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. And Srila Prabhupada also, he says, life should be so molded that one will always have the chance to think of Krishna. One should always act in such a way that all his daily activities are in connection with Krishna. He should arrange his life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours he cannot but think of Krishna. And the Lord's promise is that anyone who is in such pure Krishna consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna, where he will be engaged in the association of Krishna, face to face. The most confidential part of knowledge is spoken to Arjuna because he is a dear friend of Krishna. Everyone who follows the path can become a dear friend to Krishna and obtain the same perfection of Arjuna. These words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna, the very form with 2 hands, carrying a flute, that bluish boy with a beautiful face and peacock feather in his hair. There are descriptions of Krishna found in the Brahma Samhita and other literatures. One should fix his mind on this original form of Godhead, Krishna. One should not even divert his mind. One should not even divert his attention to other forms of the Lord. The Lord has multi-forms as Vishnu, Narayan, Rama, Varaha, etc. But a devotee should concentrate his mind on the form that was present before Arjuna. Concentration on of the mind on the form of Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge, and this is disclosed to Arjuna because Arjuna is the most dear friend of Krishna's. So this is very clear right there. Just think of Krishna. Focus on Krishna. Serve Krishna. Be a devotee of Krishna. Krishna is saying it in this verse. Prabhupada's making it very clear. Don't be distracted by these other incarnations. Okay, it's nice to hear, Ram Leela. It's nice to hear about Lord Varaha on his appearance day. And there's Singadev, Everybody likes the pastime of Prahlad Nrsimha. And so much is there in the 7th canto. But it's just to help us to surrender to Krishna and understand the potency of Krishna and how Krishna is the cause of all causes. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Siddhulabha. That it's very rare for one to actually understand Krishna and come to the real conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam, that we need to focus our mind on Krishna. And so having said that, it's also true that we have our eternal constitutional position in the spiritual world, and we may be a resident of Vaikuntha, right? Like Vritrasura, or Chitraketu apparently is an eternal associate of Lord Sankarshan in Vaikuntha. And so if he had meditated, instead of meditating on Sankarshan, if he had meditated on Krishna, would that have been a blunder on his part? Would that have, caused confusion in his meditation? Or would it cause some delay in his attaining his goal? The answer is no, because within Krishna is everything, right? That's what they're saying, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, that Krishna is the cause of all causes and all that is. So all the other incarnations of the Lord are included within Krishna. But Krishna is not necessarily included in all the other incarnations of the Lord, right? None of the other incarnations has all the qualities of Krishna, certainly not the pastimes of Krishna, and nor the associates of Krishna. So it's kind of like, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that all beings are in me, but I am not in them. Right? He says, how's it go? Matstani sarvabhutani nachaham teshvavastitaha. That everything is situated in me. Everything, everyone, everything that exists is in me, but I'm not necessarily in them. Right? In the same way that, like, if you think of the ocean, so in the ocean there's so many drops. All the drops are in the ocean. But you can't say, but the whole ocean is not in every drop, right? So it's like that. All the different incarnations and expansions are all just like little tiny specks compared to the whole Krishna, and they're all included in Krishna, but Krishna's not in every incarnation. He's not in every, in one sense, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu is there, right? And Super Souls in every atom is in the heart of everyone, but we're talking about Krishna. We're not talking about Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. So Krishna, like Prabhupada says, that transcendental, that bluish boy with a beautiful face and peacock feathers who has 2 hands and carries a flute, he's in his own category. He's contains everything, but he's not in the other incarnations. So when we worship Krishna, we're worshiping everyone. And there's that analogy from Bhagavatam that, like watering the root of the tree or supplying food to the stomach, then the whole body is satisfied. The whole tree is nourished. So we're safe just worshiping Krishna. And that's why Srila Prabhupada gave us Krishna. He gave us Radha and Krishna and directed us to just worship Krishna. Because whoever you are eternally, you will realize that by worshiping Krishna. And by the grace of Krishna and the devotees of Krishna, their mercy, then we'll be able to understand our eternal constitutional position, even if it's not in Goloka with Krishna. That Krishna will illuminate that for us as we worship him. So those are some of the points that I wanted to make. Any questions or comments or reflections on these points?
Hare Krishna. I'm wondering about this last point of by serving Krishna, we automatically please everyone. I've never understood this. So, like, we're sitting here and serving Krishna by discussing his pastimes. How are people in the neighborhood, pleased? Maybe I'm thinking of it in a very limited way, but can you help me understand?
Yeah. I mean, they may not know that they're pleased, but they're actually being benefited. Right? Everyone in the neighborhood, everyone in the world, everyone in the universe is getting spiritual benefit by us sitting here hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? So there's so many examples of that one person's devotional service brings about good for everyone. Or conversely, one person's demoniac activities bring about bad consequences for everyone. Right? Like when Vena was the king, then it was a terrible condition for everyone on the planet. The earth refused to produce food. There was scarcity. There was fear. The Brahmins weren't able to perform their sacrifices properly. The demigods were being aloof. They didn't want to get anywhere near it. And so everything became inauspicious, and the blessings of higher beings were lacking, and even the earth was not cooperating, and the basic necessities of life were not there because of one person's of course, he was the king, but still, it was one person, his demoniac behavior. It was creating like a collective karma situation for everyone. And then afterwards, when the Brahmins put an end to Vena, and they ushered in the reign of Prithu Maharaj, then the whole thing changed, because Prithu Maharaj was a devotee. So now the earth was like, wow, a devotee king. Now we want to support him, and we want to support the praja under his rule and make everybody happy. So then the earth started producing in abundance. There was so much prosperity. The weather was good. The climate became, very regulated. There was it would rain, a nice, peaceful, gentle rain every night, beautiful sunshine during the day, which was ideal for agricultural production. And everything just became auspicious. The sacrifices were going on. The demigods were pleased. They were bestowing all benedictions and necessities for human beings. So, like that. So people may not realize how much devotees chanting Hare Krishna in their neighborhood or hearing Bhagavatam and doing so many services, worshipping the deity, the presence of the deity, how much that's benefiting them. But it's having huge consequences, like beneficial consequences. Yeah. And one day people may appreciate it. Like we can see, just even materially speaking, the quality of living in the neighborhood has risen since the temple was established here, and more devotees have moved into the neighborhood. So the quality of life has gone up. The neighborhood has become safer. It's become beautified. It's become more peaceful, better place to live. So like that, people are benefiting. Yeah.
I'm thinking of the example you gave is striking, that Prithu Maharaj, he was a king, and his devotional service profoundly impacted the whole planet.
Mm.
My challenge is understanding how someone who's not recognized in society can make much of a difference. So I like your point that the neighborhood we've seen around here improves. But this reminds me of the point that Hridayananda Maharaj often talks about is agyata sukriti, how we rely too much on this.
Mm-hmm.
And we might get a little lazy. Like, oh, we're here chanting Hare Krishna, so the whole world benefits, and we just kick back on that. And forgetting that Srila Prabhupada, he went and met world leaders, and he wanted to give his books to world leaders. He wanted to revolutionize the whole planet like Prithu Maharaj did.
Yeah.
So we can't be lazy in the name of, oh, my bhakti, it benefits the whole universe. Thanks for bringing up that point about Prithu Maharaj.
Yeah, so it's both things, that our bhakti does benefit the whole universe, but also we can directly benefit people by talking to them, telling them about Krishna, inviting to our programs, inviting them to eat at Kalachandji's. Sometimes devotees will go door to door, distribute cookies and things like that, right? To try to give people association, give them mercy in whatever way, shape, or form they will accept. So like that, both things. But I just remembered also that the Bhagavatam starts with the sages of Naimisharanya performing 1,000-year sacrifice for what? The benefit of humanity, because they know that Kali Yuga is coming and they want to help the world. They want to do good for the world. So they're doing a yagya to benefit humanity. So when we do Sankirtan Yagya, that's benefiting humanity. Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts about Ritrasura? Yes.
This question reminded me of the verse, the Swastyastu Vishwasya Kala Prasidatam. It was really, so I just was reading a little bit.
Go ahead and say the translation for those who don't know.
Translation: May there be good fortune throughout the universe, and may all envious persons be pacified. May all living entities become calm by practicing Bhakti Yoga, for by accepting devotional service, they will think of each other's welfare. Therefore, let us all engage in the service of the Supreme Transcendence, Lord Sri Krishna, and always remain absorbed in thought of Him.
Mm.
And it's really nice in the purport. Prabhupada talks about the qualities of a Vaishnava, but I think it's exactly what you're saying, that by practicing it, we naturally become compassionate. We naturally think of others also.
Yeah.
So it's not just I'm worshiping Krishna, so I just don't need to do anything else. But naturally the tendency becomes awakened within us to share that with others and be compassionate and bring it out. So,
Yeah, and we see in that verse that Prahlad Maharaj is praying for the benefit of envious people, right? Dear Lord, may all envious people be pacified. So we can also pray for people out there who are envious and demoniac, materialistic, and we can pray for their benefit. May they become peaceful. May they find shelter in you. May they take steps forward in their Krishna consciousness. Right? That's another way we can help.
I'm thinking that this is highlighting the difference in my mind between Kanishta, the first level devotee, and a Madhyama devotee, is that a Kanishta devotee will get proud that, oh, my bhakti benefits the whole universe, so I'm going to sit here and it's self-absorbed. But as Nrsinga Rupa Prabhu was pointing out, there's a level of compassion that one develops as one advances, and I want to help others. I want to benefit others by this practice. So, we need to develop compassion in order to properly understand the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam.
And I mean, if a person is thinking, oh, the world is benefiting by my bhakti, so I'm going to do 64 rounds a day or something, then they might also think that, well, the world is benefiting a little bit by my bhakti because I'm one person performing bhakti. But imagine if there were millions of people performing bhakti and chanting 64 rounds a day. So let me get more people to practice bhakti so that, we kind of like start tipping the scales here by the force of everyone's bhakti. Because that's also true, right? The more people are doing it, the more impact it's going to have. And Prabhupada said that if even 1% of the world's population becomes Krishna conscious, the whole situation of the planet will change. Just had his hand up, and then Nanda Braja.
Yeah. I do think it is kind of, it is sweet to say that I'm, practicing bhakti for helping other people. In a sense, we see a few examples of people who are kind of bhajananandis. Not to say that that's our mood, but I do have a little bit of appreciation for them. And also, people who take care of the temple or things like that. But they, Krishna can send people to the pure devotee. Anyways, so that's just a small thought I had.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because he was like such an amazing preacher, the lion guru and all that. But he spent 10 years of his life doing nothing but sitting in a hut chanting Hare Krishna. He was chanting like hundreds of rounds every day. And that was jumping in the Ganga. Yeah, I mean, that was to fortify himself and invoke the mercy of the Lord for the benefit of humanity. So we see that great souls do this. They're not just always giving, but they're also fortifying. They're also nourishing themselves. Throughout the Bhagavatam, we see many examples where before embarking on a mission, devotees will go and enter into long periods of meditation, right? Like Lord Brahma before creating, like the Prachetas before begetting progeny, and like that. There's many examples. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur followed that example. Even Srila Prabhupada, when he was, preparing for coming to the West, which he knew he was going to do at some point, there was a period where he went to Advaita Bhavan in Shantipur, and he was just chanting and chanting and chanting and chanting to try to, just invoke the mercy of the Lord, knowing that without the mercy of the Lord, nothing's going to happen. So it's both, that we have to be balanced. We can't just be out there. In the early days of ISKCON, like in the 70s, devotees were just going out for, even when in the 90s when I joined, we were just going out day in, day out, like 6-7 days a week, all day long, rushing through our rounds so we could get out on the street, hardly doing any reading, and it was all about distribute more books and all that, save the conditioned souls. But like, where are they all now? Like, where is my generation? It's like most of them didn't make it because they weren't nourishing themselves. So the balance has to be there, that we're doing our devotional practices for the benefit of that it's for our benefit and it's for the benefit of the world. And we're going out and giving Krishna consciousness to others, and that's also for our benefit and the benefit of the world. But if we do only one and not the other, it's not going to be for our benefit. It's not going to, in the long term, we're going to be missing, there's a missing piece, and the whole thing's going to fall apart. Right? So we need to be balanced in those. Okay, Nanda Braja.
You pretty much said what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Yeah, the thing is, we kind of what happened was like in the early days, it was all let's get out there and take over the world with Krishna consciousness, and then devotees realized that devotees were falling down and it was not sustainable, and we started to really focus on boiling the milk and developing community and all that, and then it was kind of like the pendulum swang in the opposite direction, right? That the preaching kind of slowed down a lot, and there are just maybe a few brahmacharis going out and everyone else is focusing on community building and devotee care and education and all these things. So so we need to, that's typical of the when an institution is in its infancy, it goes through stages. So there's the pioneering stage where everybody's like, yeah, we're going to go conquer the world. And then there's the sort of organizational development stage where it's like, okay, we need to get organized. We need to have systems. We need policies. We need structure. We need, resources. And then it goes into the next stage, which is integration, where it's like, okay, we have our systems, we have our policies, we have our structures, we have our devotee care, we have, things to protect people, and we also have a mission, So let's use our resources now and our organization to refocus and really take over the world, because now we're capable of doing it. Now we have the sustainability, we have the infrastructure, the institutional infrastructure and organization to be able to actually do it sustainably and support devotees through a lifetime of devotional service. Okay, Nanda Braja, did I say again what you wanted to say? Great minds think alike.
You said it right when I was thinking it.
Well, thank you for giving me all the good ideas.
Just one thing is that when you talk to Sankirtan devotees, their appreciation is that they, like you were saying, they work off each other. Their rounds in the morning propel them in their Sankirtan when they go out and touch people's hearts. And then when they have that experience, they come back and their rounds are that much sweeter. So they're working off of each other beautifully to really elevate us in our Krishna consciousness very quickly. The Sankirtan movement's so powerful, right?
Yeah. Yep, that's what we're doing. That's what we are. Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan movement. Okay. Oh, Daniel.
Thank you for this class. Your instruction is extremely valuable. Hare Krishna. I think this conversation is really interesting because for some reason, and I came in late, my apologies, but for some reason when I sat down, I started thinking about a specific politician and how I and not so much like, oh, like that person needs something specifically, but I just thought generally, I thought, Krishna can turn the heart of anyone. Krishna can steal the heart of anyone, and Radha can steal the heart of anyone and give it to Krishna, and no matter who you are. And so I just thought, for some reason, my mind was just very centered on people in power. And so I thought it was really interesting the way the conversation went.
Yeah, that it's important for influential people to come to Krishna consciousness. Yeah, that Srila Prabhupada, that was one of the strategy that Srila Prabhupada really tried to execute was, he wanted to meet dignitaries, he wanted to meet politicians, he wanted to meet world leaders, celebrities, like that. And he was able to connect with quite a few, actually. So, yeah, we can reach out and try to influence influential people, and we can also try to become increasingly influential ourselves by performing processes of bhakti and by, being out there in the world in powerful ways. And even just, we can all work within our circle of influence, right? So whoever whoever it is. If you're a parent, then you're influencing your children. If you're a teacher, you're influencing students. If you're an administrator, you're influencing your people that are accountable to you. If you're a department head, you're influencing those. If you work if you work out there in the world, you have an influence on your colleagues. If you're a college student, you have an influence to some extent on your peer group. So just think about what is my circle of influence? Who are the people that actually listen when I talk, and take me seriously, and work on them, and then and build trust and develop qualities, and then we'll see that gradually our circle of influence will increase according to our sincerity, our purity, and Krishna's mercy. Okay, so let's wrap it up there. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.